Those of us who bring you the automotive news log infinitely more air miles than we do road miles. Over time, this unhealthy seat time imbalance makes editors cranky and irritable at best, or downright postal at worst. The cure? An epic drive. Reynolds drove our Volt from Detroit to LA. Lowe and Lassa tag teamed to drive from Tokyo to LA in a Suzuki Kizashi. Kino raced Europe's Orient Express in a Hyundai Genesis, and Mackenzie participated in those last two trips, drove a Challenger on one lap of Europe, and conquered Australia's Outback in the Subaru named for it. Now it's my turn. Being 1/4 Norwegian, I decided on Norway as my destination and plotted a route that included the gracefully arched and curving bridges of the Atlantic Road, the steep and kinky ribbon of asphalt known as the Trollstigen, and the desolate E6 highway that stretches north past the Arctic Circle to the spot where Mom's Winther maiden name entered the family on April 2nd, 1817 in Foski. By starting the trip in Bergen, Norway's second city down in the heart of the fjords, I hope to also prove that Europe's best scenery and driving roads are not exclusively found in the Alps. Bergen's Brygge, or wharf, was a Hanseatic League trading center. From the 14th to the 18th centuries, powerful German businessmen ran the town from a row of colorful wooden buildings. It seemed like the perfect spot to launch this expedition in another powerful German. Just minutes outside of town, we witness an important trait of the Norwegians. They are avid tunnelers. Tunnels and ferries are the best way to navigate a country comprised mostly of steep rocky mountains that plunge straight into deep fjords. On one 32-mile stretch of the E16 highway from Bergen toward Oslo, we spend 27 miles in tunnels, including one that's 15.2 miles long. The Lærdal tunnel design incorporates 3 large cathedrals. Each is illuminated with multi-hued lighting to keep drivers from going speed blind in the world's longest road tunnel. By mid-afternoon, the rain lifts just long enough to squeeze in a stop at Gudvangen's Viking Valley. Here, beneath the tallest waterfall in Northern Europe, Georg Hansen has assembled 8 Vikings to meet with us, and we gather around the fire in their log house for a bit of Viking 101.
For some strange matter, the Vikings loved gold. And of course, being a young man, born, bred in a place like this, and needing one of the girls in the neighborhood, and there might only have been a couple, and to make a farm for his family, he would need some money. So the best way to then get money was to travel abroad and fight for some king.
Okay.
Because they were paid in gold.
My ancestors' ancestors were trading and projecting their power throughout Northern Europe and even Africa centuries before the Germans came to Bergen. Vikings were clever and honest, if ruthless traders. Georg shares a saga describing a cold and bedraggled Viking offering to trade his sword for a farmer's cloak.
And this farmer was out in his field harvesting, and he had a nice warm cloak. And the Viking said, "I'll trade your cloak for my sword. I have no need for my sword now." And the farmer said, no way. That sword won't keep me warm. And then the Viking said, "Well, you won't need to be kept warm because I'll cut your head off now. And I'll have your cloak." But first he offered to trade. And that's basically, I think, how the Vikings would have done it. They would have tried to trade first. There is another story about when the Danish and Norwegian Vikings were going for Paris. But when they got close to Paris, they were met by the French. And the French cut their swords in two, because the French had something very special. They had this special steel that is, like this one, is 1,200 pieces of steel forged together. That's what makes this pattern. And the Vikings withdrew from Paris, and a week later they came back with 2 shiploads of gold.
And said, give us some of those swords.
We want to trade with you. Can we buy all these beautiful swords of yours? And we'll give you all this gold. And the French said, yeah, that's a good trade. So they traded. And then a few days later they came back and took Paris.
I've purchased a horned helmet for the occasion, but learned that this affectation was inserted into our cultural memory centuries later during the Romantic period.
I mean, they're funny, but they're not Viking horns. I mean, Vikings never had horns on the helmets.
What do you mean? Wagner operas have been lying to me all this time? You always see
But
helmets and horns.
Wagner is a man of the 19th century, and this national romantic feelings of this time, they try to imagine how could Vikings have looked like.
Georg explains that metal helmets were pretty rare in Viking time. So here we have a replica of the only helmet found in Scandinavia. No horns. As we prepare to bid our Viking pals adieu, Georg offers to trade his sword for my Spyder, which retails here for the equivalent of $800,000 after taxes. Gulp. Just 30 miles and 1 ferry ride away is a medieval marvel in Koppanger. So no trip to Norway would be complete without stopping at a stave church or two. Now, first of all, stave church, that just refers to the construction where you've got vertical staves or like lodge poles that are anchored in horizontal ones that are set on the foundation. Earlier churches were called post churches, and those ones just had the stakes in the ground, and a lot of those rotted out and they fell down. In fact, this church was built on the site of 2 previous post churches. And it's also kind of a historical significance to this trip too. Koppanger was a market town, and there was a big war here that sort of marked the defining line between the Viking Age and the modern age. This is when King Sverre came here and burned it down in 1184, which is right around the time this church was built. This act triggered the battle at Furumreit later that summer, when Sverre Sigurdsson and his loyal supporters defeated the royal army. King Magnus Erlingsson was killed here along with some 2,000 men, and that was the dividing line between the Viking Age and the modern age. Right here in Koppanger. So we've checked the box for stave churches. Next up on the agenda for today are a glacier and the 8th most dangerous road in the world, the Trollstigen Highway. With the temps in the 50s, I put the top down, wind blocker up, crank the heater, and enjoy the new perspective. We pause for lunch at the Boybreen Glacier, a toe off the Jostedalsbreen ice field, continental Europe's largest. Giant glaciers like this ground the mountains down and created the fjords we're skirting. From here on, the driving improves dramatically on the pristine, virtually traffic-free roads. The squiggly, narrow B60 traverses a mountain topped with a ski resort as our R8 starts to flex its V10 muscles and warm its carbon brakes. Long uphill tunnels today feature dramatically different weather and vegetation from one end to the other. One leads from a forest to a virtual moonscape of rocks and ochre-colored lichen. So here we are at the Trollstigen. I'm sitting about 2,800 feet above sea level. We're going to take about a 9% grade down 11 hairpin turns. Let's go for a ride. The sound of this slightly out of phase double 5 exhaust note bouncing back off the rock walls at 8,500 RPM still rings sweetly in my ears. We awaken Molde as the sun arrives on the Romsdal Peninsula, and it couldn't have shown up at a better time, because today we are headed north towards Kristiansund on Highway 64, aka the Atlanterhavsveien, or Atlantic Road. We're parked at the southern end of the Atlantic Road. This was voted the construction of the century in Norway. It was built between 83 and 89. It includes 8 bridges that connect a bunch of little coastal communities across these rocky little landscapes here. It was a harrowing adventure to build the thing. They weathered like 12 different hurricanes while they were building these bridges. It's supposed to be a great drive. Let's go see what it looks like. As we say goodbye to the Atlantic Road, a small kiosk selling traditional Scandinavian waffles grabs our attention. Trondheim will have to wait. Plenty of sour cream and jam. The perfect lunch on the Atlantic Road. As the afternoon descends, we arrive at our destination, a young city teeming with life that's home to the largest religious structure in Northern Europe. Well, to the end of day 4, we reached Trondheim. We've come inland a little ways to the 3rd largest city in Norway, and I'm sitting in front of Nidarosdomen Cathedral. Trondheim's Nidarosdomen Cathedral was built on the grave of St. Olaf. King Olaf was the Viking king who changed the Vikings from their pagan religion to Christianity. That's why he's a very important patron saint in Norway. And Norway is still a kingdom, and the Constitution declares that all kings must be crowned here in Nidarosdomen Cathedral. About 60 miles short of our destination for the night, we cross the polar circle, demarking the land of the midsummer midnight sun. In early September, the sun sets around 8 p.m., and the fall colors are in full swing. We arrive in my ancestral hometown of Foski precisely on schedule to meet Anna Margaret and Arnie, who live on what was once the Erikstad farm. On April 2nd, 1817, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Johan Christian Winther Hansen, was born on this property. He was the first generation to break the tradition of naming sons the father's first name plus son, or the daughter's first name plus daughter. Johan Christian Winther Hansen, that Winther was named after a prominent doctor, the very first doctor in this region, who came up here in the late 18th century and stayed through 1825 or so. That was Winther, a German doctor, strangely enough. And so when he grew up, he dropped the Hansen, and all of his children were named Winther. And that's the line that went all the way down to my mother. That was her maiden name. Johan was one of 6. Johan went on to have 18 children. His wife had the last one when she was in her 40s. Only 15 of them lived. And one of them, Anton, ended up emigrating to America. Our hosts welcome us warmly with the delightful surprise of a traditional Norwegian family smorgasbord, including spectacular round, open-faced sandwiches of lox and eggs, baby shrimp and lemon, roast beef, and burgers, with homemade nut cake and coffee for dessert. Eating a family meal on the very site where my earliest Winther ancestor took his first meals is the undisputed highlight of the trip. The next morning, we visit the historic Sjunstegard farm to see what the Erikstad farm might have looked like back in the day. Stone foundations and chimneys, along with log constructions and birch bark lined sod roofs, are the order of the day.
So I think Sjunstegard farm is oriented towards school children, hence the stilts.
From here, we push north to Tromsø, the North's largest city, and our final destination. Considered the Paris of the North, Tromsø is home to the dramatic Arctic Cathedral, and we stop to snap a pic before the sun goes down. While touring through this interesting port city, I miss a sign prohibiting car traffic, and we encounter the trip's first and only flashing lights and siren. I'm warned about the tricky signs and allowed to continue without what surely would have been an expensive ticket. We've come 1,333 miles in 5 days, and Norway's load speed limits have helped the R8 sip fuel at a rate of 17 miles per $9.85 gallon of premium. Oh, that's almost $200. We've watched the foliage change from lush late summer green to mid-autumn yellows and reds. I've drunk mud with Vikings, conquered the Trollstigen and Atlantic Road in a 525-horse Audi R8 Spyder, and shared a family dinner on my ancestral farmstead. As epic drives go, this one will be tough to top. But I've got German and Irish routes to explore, and this seat time rebalance won't last forever.